Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Bonus Points podcast. I'm your host Joe Garrett, has always been joined by Ollie Guy.
Hey man, she's already going.
I know. So we have two special guests for this podcast. One is my dog who's disappeared. I don't know where she's gone, but she's here. She's called Alyx, spelled A-L-Y-X. She's named after a character in the game we're playing. I had to have her. And then our other special guest is Ellen Rose. Welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. And
Thank you for being
I'm
here.
so excited. I'm so excited to talk about this game. I'm not enough.
Yeah, no,
Not many
I'm
people have played
excited
it,
to pick your brains about it. But first, a little intro. For those that don't know Ellen, she's best known from Outside Extra, where she does many videos over there. Previously of Xbox On, which is where I met you, weirdly enough, doing a video about VR.
VR. Small world again, yeah.
Yeah, I only realised that earlier today.
Oh my gosh, I didn't think of that, yeah.
Full
Play
circle.
VR Minecraft, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. In San Francisco, which was...
Of all places,
Yeah.
like two British people meeting in America on a random
Well, you
press
kind
trip.
of you kind of met in the metaverse. You're like the first ever metaverse friends, really.
Yeah.
VR.
Yeah, that
was
sounds
ridiculous,
really
isn't it? Yeah.
uncool. That
We have legs.
yeah. Right. So yeah. Wait, I'm going to put it downstairs. I'm going to put it downstars. She had a chance to say hello. I don't know if they can even say right.
Hold
Everyone
her
say
up, quickly
goodbye
hold
to
her up
Alex.
so we can see. Because all the questions
Yeah,
asked if
we've got to
Alex
see
was
the
going to be in
dog.
it. All the comments
Yeah.
were Alex was going to be in it. Pick her
I
up.
thought she
quickly.
might settle. Okay. Well, I'll just show her.
Look at her. Look at her little wiggly butt. Yes!
Right, apologies to the audio listeners, but there was a dog in the room. The dog's gone. She was here because she's named after a character in the game to demonstrate my love that I have for the Half-Life series. So you can imagine I was very excited, Ellen, because I was so certain you were going to pick another game that you're often talking about on Outside Extra.
Yeah.
Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning. But you didn't pick that. You shocked me.
Well, the thing is, it's my favourite, most underrated game. So it's not my top game of all time, but it's the one game that I'm like, why haven't more people played this? And like, I absolutely adored it. Like, there's literally, if you go to Steam, because I went on about it so much on Outside Extra, there's like one of the top reviews of it was just Ellen was right. On Steam.
That's so good. You've left your mark.
Yeah, it was amazing when the remaster came out. Video Games Chronicle, the guys that came to me and were like, "Hey, we want like the big fangirl to review like this new one and see what you think of it." And I was a little bit harsh on the remake, but it was fine. Because it was kind of a bit of a spit and polish port rather than like that. I was like, oh, I wonder if they can do all new stuff. And no. There's the DLC, and you'll get that when it comes. But yeah,
that's cool because like cult classics are kind of like. They're our bread and butter here at the bonus points. Like that, like so many of our games we choose are those kind of cult classics. Even like ones that we are fans of and we want to let people know about, or ones we've just heard people talk passionately about, but no one else has played. Like we kind of gravitate to games like that.
They're so like it. I love stuff like that. Like finding what people like really love and just hearing them chat about it for ages. Like I don't really care about driving games. Like I care that they exist for people who like driving games. I want them to exist for those people, but personally I don't really know much about them. But my colleague Luke the other day was telling me all about this iRacing platform thing, and I was like, no idea what any of this is, but I love your passion for this. And just talk about it, go for it. And I'm like, cool, this sounds interesting.
You gave him a little pat on the head, sent him on his way. Go play with his little toy cars.
But yeah, and seeing as I've gone off and on about how much I love Kingdoms of Amalur again and again, I was like, I'm going to let him talk about the cars. I'll let him talk about the cars. But yeah, that game is such a brilliant little, there's so much like weirdness behind it and how it was made and all the drama behind the scenes as well that is really interesting to look into. It's quite wild. Like Rhode Island owned the game for so many years before THQ Nordic got it. So it's one of those games that, little before we go into the main game that we're going to talk about.
I realise what it is. You're just cheating. You're having your cake and eating it.
Snuck it in.
You're just choosing the games. We're not putting it on the list.
Sorry. But like, if you like RPGs with good combat, it's sort of like Bayonetta-ish combat. It's good.
The cult classics, like when we do them, they either do really well or really badly. It doesn't seem to be any kind of in between. They're either like literally the bottom of the list, or they're a top 10, like every time.
Yeah.
So it's always a bit of a risk.
Yeah, I think you've played it a little bit safer with a game that it seems everyone who plays it loves. So yeah, Half-Life Alyx. Obviously, it's kind of notable. It's our first VR game, and it's good. We've been wanting to do a VR game for ages. We both have VR headsets. We play VR with each other. And so it's kind of nice we're doing the biggie. Like, this is kind of the only AAA VR game, unless I'm missing one.
Actually this week, little plug, over on Outside Extra, I did a list video of some games that we would like to see on the PSVR 2, which will be coming out in February.
Yeah.
And there's another one that was made for Oculus called Asgard's Wrath, where you kind of like, it's all very Nordic, and you're a god, and you go through like different, you play as various different characters, and it's very and very high end in terms of VR gaming, and it is like a solid kind of like 20 odd hour adventure, which I was like, oh cool, and that came out just before this, but this is better in my opinion.
Yeah, and then there's also Astrobot Rescue Mission, which is one of my...
I've only played a little bit, and I love Astrobot. Like, I played Astro's Playroom on the PS5 when I got it. It's outstanding little game, like just so solid, so good.
Yeah, so that's kind of like that's kind of like the VR landscape. I mean, obviously, then in the indie space, there's just endless, awesome creative things. Ollie and I spent a lot of time playing mini golf. We've done a VR mini golf video on this channel, playing hide and seek, not mini golf in it, but it was still fun nonetheless. So you kind of hinted a little bit before we started recording. I kind of sent you some loose homework to play Half-Life 2 before the podcast.
Well, my excuse is I was ill over Christmas, so and then also I am trying to get my way through God of War Ragnarok so I can cover it on Outside Extra, because that came out also when it was super busy for us. So yeah, I have not played any other Half-Life. I've played bits for capture. I've played the opening of Half-Life 2 twice to get recordings, and like I think it's to get some recordings of Noam Chomsky. But otherwise, I'm quite a noob when it comes to Half-Life stuff, but still absolutely adored Half-Life Alyx. Even though I had no idea of like I knew, bits and bobs, Black Mesa and all that sort of stuff, and the Combine and everything, but I got absolutely hooked. It got its teeth into me, and now it's there on my list of shame. We'll get to it, I promise.
I mean, I won't bring up the fact that you completed Alyx multiple times instead of playing the odd ones. I mean, that's fine. So do you want to kind of talk about like your story for like how like you picked it up and kind of like your first reaction to playing it? Like, was it immediate like, oh wow, this is just amazing because it's in VR, or was it the world or the characters? Like, what is it that has suddenly shot this relatively new game to like your favorite of all time?
Well, I just from the other Valve games I've played, like I played through Portal and that series and stuff, and like I played some Resident Evil 7 in VR, which was horrific. I would not recommend for anyone of a nervous disposition, and which is me with scary games. And like that was it was quite impressive, and I was like, I really felt like I was in the world, and it was horrible. And but with Half-Life Alyx, like I couldn't go. It was the first time I played it on the Valve Index. And the reason I played Half-Life Alyx, I played it like a full year after it came out, basically, because I was actually asked to be on the panel for the judging panel for the BAFTA Games of 2020, out in 2021. And they actually, there were certain games that they were like, we need you to have played most or some of this game, let us know if there's something that's on a platform that you don't have. So I think there were a fair few of us who were like, we haven't been able to get our hands on a Valve Index because they're like £1,000. And so I was loaned it. And like I've played, like, you know, as I said, fair bit of VR, but then I set it up, put it on, and I kind of like was blown away as soon as I started up this game, because it's so good at atmosphere. And I just felt immediately like one thing I was super like, the very opening of Alyx is just that bit where it's like when you look up and there's the big tower and the thing flies over you to make you look up and like see this huge thing in front of you. And it's brilliant because this game just starts where you're stood on a balcony, and then it's just like you can pick everything up.
Yeah.
Everything here, everything that is right, like there's cans. They made the correct thing of like there's bottles, so like you're sat on a balcony, there's a bottle, and you shake it and you go, ooh, physics, and it's like, it's really good because it's not actually like through physics, it's like some trick one of the developers did to make it look like there's water in there, or vodka or beer more likely in these ones, but like, and then it's just like
pens,
throw it off.
The pens as well. The pens. I reckon the average player spent like
gosh.
15 minutes on that balcony.
I was just like, I was also like putting off because I knew there were like scary bits coming later on when I first was playing. But I was just like, oh my gosh, I can draw on the window, and I can write Ellen is cool. And, like do all these things, and like
that's the least cool thing you could have written.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think I wrote Ellen rocks. I was like hello and all that stuff. Just doing all the silly things that, you know, you can do when you suddenly discover you can do that. And and I just found it so intuitive. Because it was like one of the first games where I was really like, oh, I have to use my hands to reach out and things and do things, and like there's that first slidey door and it's like, oh, there's a big red bar, if I do that, pull it, done, it does it. And it's just it was so neatly done, and I just couldn't get over, like, you go into the room that has the camera in it, and like I'm just like, oh, there's a VHS tape, I'm gonna pick that up. I remember those. Like nostalgia and things like that. And the little oh gosh, what's the little creatures?
Is it the head crab? Tiny... Was it
not the head crab? The little one that you can hold them in the Half-Life games and you throw them and they explode. The combine creatures. And there's one in a jar on the desk.
Oh, the thing that you use for like healing, that they get like squished, the little lava thingies.
No, but that also, like, when I first saw that, I was like, oh, do I have to do that every single time? And then by the end of the game, I was like, la 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 la, wee! Just like look up real close and see it all go.
I wouldn't even be looking. I'd be looking somewhere else and just leaving my hand there, getting healed.
Yeah. I was just like, by the end of the game, I was like, ooh, this is so clever, and like really like sticking my face in. But at the beginning, I was like, oh.
What about you, Ollie? Because obviously you've played a lot of Half-Life games. We've probably played through quite a few of them together. And then you're also, you're in VR a lot. So maybe some of the novelty of, manipulating physics objects in VR might not have stood out as much. Was it still like an exciting moment loading it up?
It was, it's cool. I don't. Why have you dropped me in to be the negative one? I love this game, and you set me up to be the negative one. All I'm going to say is that I looked online, and the average playthrough was 12 hours, and mine's 8, because a lot of the picking things up, I think I've done it before, so I was just like running past it. I did draw a picture with the pens though. You'll be pleased to know.
Yeah,
I did mess around with those.
Good.
Yeah.
So I played through, because I'd played through it before. I played through with developer commentary, which definitely don't do on your first playthrough because it spoils everything, but that was fine because I knew it all. But one of the things they talk about is they designed this game knowing it would be a lot of people's first VR game or game like this, and they really, they designed the opening like that, and like it seems like while developing it, they took so many just learnings from things that people hadn't considered that people would do, like. A big part of the game is like rummaging for loot and collecting items. Like that wasn't a plan. They just saw playtesters wanting to do that. So they added it.
You just want to open all the drawers and you can. And I was like, I can interact with all of this. This is what VR should be forever. Like,
but it'd be so boring in a normal game. Like press X, press X, press X.
Well, yeah, but then, in Half-Life, that's not normally scavenging is not normally something you do. Like, you kind of come
No.
across supply crates, but they're pretty much right in front of you. So like,
Yeah, and you just
it was
hit
a
them.
new thing to be
It's
looking
like-
for.
But they said
ammo
about how
and
much
stuff.
of a challenge it caused, because obviously they want you to be rewarded with getting like ammo and upgrades and stuff. But then
Yeah.
they also want like ammo to be scarce, but they never want you to get into a point where you're in an encounter where you don't have enough ammo to survive. So they do like the cheat that they do in a lot of games where you'll get like a box that you break or a thing that you'll open, and the amount of ammo you'll get will be depending on what you
Completely
have.
dependent on what you have.
But then they're saying
yeah.
that causes a problem, because if players realize that, then they'll stop caring about searching because they know that the game will always give it to them. So like, it caused like this big dilemma, because they suddenly ended up making kind of like, not really a loot game, but like an item gathering game, resource gathering. But then they kind of hadn't really built the core mechanic around it. And I think probably the resin is the big way to solve that, because you don't need it. It's basically a thing that you use to kind of upgrade 3D print upgrades for your
Yeah.
weapons. But if you don't get it, like, it's not like you're not going to have enough ammo to survive a combat
No.
encounter.
No, I absolutely, yeah. I was one of those people that was like, I want to find all the things. I'm a big collectibles person, and I was like, they've made this game for me.
Yeah, so I guess we'll kind of talk through. Maybe we kind of go a little bit more chronologically through this game, because there's quite a few like standout moments I think we'd want to kind of talk about. So I guess like the opening of the game, it kind of goes back to this a bit later on, but it's kind of almost a bit more horror-ish. Before you kind of meet any of the like the Combine, the more like human-like enemies, there's a lot of like basically zombies that you're fighting.
Mm-hmm.
You've already kind of mentioned, Ellen, that you don't really seem to be a big fan of like horror games. Like, did you not find this scary?
Yeah, I was terrified. I was terrified. So there's like there was so many bits. It like my playthrough, you know, probably took even longer than average because of the bits where I just get to door and go, oh, okay, I've got to go. Because I was like, I want to play a whole bunch of this so that when I'm sitting in a jury room with BAFTA, I can be like, it was good. I played it, and you know, I can share my thoughts on the game.
And they'll
rather
all
than go,
applaud you for your bravery.
Yes,
that's
like,
what
well
you were
done.
imagining.
Well done, Ellen. You know, standing ovation that I was able to get through the metro section, which is like, yeah, the first bit. Like, there's a brilliant bit that scared the life out of me, and I've got that captured because I was like trying. You know, I only had a limited amount of time with this game because I had to give the headset back afterwards. So I was like recording everything as I was playing and stuff. And there's this bit. One of the first zombies you kind of like come across is you go up to this window and then it smashes into the window in a way. I'm
I know
like,
the one.
I can see my hand. I'm absolutely terrified, and I'm like, you see, like you can see me breathing because I'm like, and it's so funny to watch back. But I was genuinely so scared. But I was just like, I wanted to get through those scary moments because I knew that there were like really funny and interesting bits, and like I just the Valve are really good at creating puzzles. Like they're, you know, I think they created some of the, you know, best and most thoughtful puzzles in games. Like, I mean, just look at Portal, and like they're so good, especially like with physics stuff, and like that works brilliantly in VR. So I was pushing through those like scary bits where the head crab's jumping out, like the hotel level. Oh my god, I don't know how I got through that. There's this one bit in the hotel level where you open a door and there's just a corridor, and then you see these like head crabs like run and go through another door right down the end. Like there's literally a bit of my footage. I'm just standing there for about 2 minutes. I'm going, oh, I'm gonna get through this. But I did it, and then like when I played it through the second time, I was still like, okay, let's do this. But it's so well crafted because they always dangle those little bits. Like another creator that I follow, Up Is Not Jump, he did a video about Half-Life Alyx, and he pointed out this excellent thing that I really appreciated as I was playing through it, wherein there's like one of the first times you have to go through a horrible dark tunnel, like to distract you in those moments, and also like paint an idea of like it's two things. It's just a distraction and it's brilliant world building because you've just you finally got your torch, you're going through this dark tunnel, and then Alex is like, okay, Russell, I need you to talk to me.
Yeah.
I need a voice. And then you've just got lovely Rhys Darby talking through your headset about a chicken club sandwich. And one, it's such a banal, conversation really, but at the same time, it's brilliant world building, because like we take, the idea of a chicken club sandwich, that's really, you can get that in a lot of restaurants, but in that point in the Half-Life timeline, you cannot get all the idea of all these
Alex
different
is like
ingredients.
amazed by it, like,
and she's like, wow, that sounds great. And I'm like, I need this conversation while I'm going through this horrible dark tunnel. So like they managed to kind of, I think again, they're aware that this is going to be a lot of people's first time in VR in a big horrible long corridor, like with some horrible things in there, and like it really helps.
So specifically with that, the BLT chat. So on the developer commentary, I feel like this is going to be all I'm going to be doing this podcast is the developer commentary. But they have a fun fact about it, because a lot of people really liked it. But so whenever they're developing a new character, they really they write a lot about the character and their backstory, and they kind of write dialogue for the character. That's never going to be in the game, but it's just so they can get it all consistent. And that was something someone had written while developing the character of Russell. And then they decided, we'll do the scene where she's scared and wants Russell to talk. And they're like, we could just take that. So that was already written, but wasn't meant to be in the game. And then they just added it in. But then I kind of ended up for myself doing that with the developer commentary, because I'd be in a scary bit. And basically the way it works is it's just like a floating headset. And I'd be like, I'm really scared. I'm really scared. I'm like, let me just put this on. And then they'll be like, so when developing the lighting, we did. And I'm just like, okay. I just got like a little podcast in my head with the game developers, because it lowers the volume of the game as well. So I use that. Ollie, hopefully I'll set you up to have a more positive thing you could say. But so once you got into the core game, you've killed your first few zombies, you've upgraded your gun, you've kind of realized what the game is going to be. What were your kind of just first impressions?
Well, the first thing I realized is that the enemies like generally don't scare me, because like I've been playing, most of my time in VR has been Resident Evil 4, where the enemy count is much higher than this game, like probably like in the 30s we're talking. So that was fine, but what I didn't realise really scared me was big things crashing and falling over. Like, because Resident Evil 4 is a remake of like a game from 2000 or something. This doesn't really have stuff like that. Whereas like there's a bit in this game where you have to make a train crash, and like I was so overwhelmed, like I just shut my eyes and my knees were shaking. Like I had to take the headset off and text my girlfriend afterwards, like my legs are shaking, like I've just caused a train crash. And like for some reason that's what gets me in VR. It's not like you can throw as many enemies at me as you want, like it's fine. I've learned that the trick is just to stay calm. Even if you're getting hit, it's just to stay calm, reload. It's fine. But as soon as it's like, the side of this building's coming down and you're standing in it, I'm literally like, I just shut my eyes. So I'm like, I can't even look at what's happening right now. But I played the whole thing with obviously I had the headset and I had headphones. And a friend of the show, Chris, massive shout out to him, because he lent me his computer so I could play the whole thing. And it ran it at the highest spec. So like it looked amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was what got me every time. The size, we were saying about that thing walking over you, the walker. That was quite shocking. But I think it was like the train crashes something towards the end that comes down that I was like, I can't even look at it because it's like making me panic.
Yeah.
And it was
so weird.
The audio as well for like those moments is, the audio through the whole game, like you can literally get like a matchbox, and like obviously if you shake it to your left ear to right ear, it will do the stereo thing, but you can like do it around and like above and below you, and you can like,
it's wild.
I'm like, I've only got I've got two ears and I got two audio output devices. How is it making things sound above and below me? Like, and I think that's what really makes those moments, really sells them, as well as the visuals. It's just the audio.
Yeah.
It's almost like it's shaking you. You're almost like feel like the bass in that. You feel like I felt like my insides
was your roommate
shaking.
Pranking you? Was she behind you with like a broom, like shoving you?
Honestly, I've never experienced it in a game. Like games generally don't really scare me. Like obviously jump scares get me, they get everyone. But I'm not like, really intense. But like these massive things that happen were like very overwhelming.
Well, there's like the huge boss fight right at the end.
Yeah.
Where you actually like fight one of those things.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is huge. Like, it was unlike any boss. And like, there's so many boss battles where you're fighting a big giant thing that's like over you and like throwing things down at you. But this was like, I feel tiny.
Yeah.
I feel like an ant. I need to like run around.
And that boss
get
was
out
like,
the way.
so you're basically aiming a gun at it and you have to pull like a lever to shoot.
Yeah,
and as I was killing it, I
failed
was
that
thinking
so
in my
many
head, like,
times.
I wish I could just hold a trigger down because, like, I can't concentrate on like trying to pull this thing and aim at the same time because I was literally like trying not to look at it.
So one of the things, quite literally is going to be all I'm going to say, but the developers were talking about is something they had to redesign. Is that like everyone's just really good at aiming in VR? Like so, like when designing like a normal first-person shooter, a flat, I don't know what we'd call them, non-VR one, they have to really bear in mind everyone's different abilities to aim, and if they say, look up here, they need to give time for people to look up, whereas in VR, people can turn instantly, and everyone's just good at aiming because it's so much more natural. So I was wondering with you, Ollie, because you play loads of like light gun games, did you feel like just ridiculously good? Like, because it basically is kind of just like a light gun, right?
Yeah, so this is one thing about the game that I wasn't that keen on, is that you can really tell it was made for it to be people's first VR game. Mm-hmm. So like if it's not your first VR game, if it's not your first VR game, and you've played like Half-Life, for example, and you get into a gunfight with an enemy, you're like, why are the enemies so stupid? And why are they so slow? Why can't they fight back? And you're literally just shooting them and their heads are like bouncing and they're just standing there. And that was like, there isn't, like the most of the times that I died, it would be because of a mine. You know, I was very, very rarely dying. And also I'd usually have 2 health kits and find more health kits as I was running around. Like, because the actual enemies shooting back they're not good. They're not very clever. And obviously aiming is so it's just your arm, right? It's easy. It's a lot easier than I think people think it would be.
Yeah. So what about you, Ellen? So was it the world? No, sorry, you go ahead, Ollie.
The only other thing that's really cool is you shot one eye when you aim, which is like something they didn't put in the game, but like obviously you're looking down sights
instinctively.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah. So what about for like the combats? So I guess like say like a gunfight with like the combine, because obviously in VR, like I'm assuming, were you doing like teleporting, moving, Ellen, or were you doing like?
The first time I played, I did teleporting. Second time I did running around with teleporting if I really needed to.
Okay.
And I felt because because of the anxiety I had with the enemies, sometimes I was like, I found a good way for me to be able to get through like the scarier combat bits was to be higher up. So I'd often teleport myself onto a table and be like shooting down.
You'd stand on the sofa while playing.
Yeah, I'm like...
They'd be like, what's she doing? Like, how to hide from this? You're like...
She's using her ultimate. You like start floating in the air. Like it's like Pharah's ult in like Overwatch.
I can't remember which bit of the game exactly it is. There's this one bit where you just put in a really dark room, and there's a lot of there's a couple of armored head crabs in there, but there's a lot of like zombies wandering around in that room. And I think the idea is you're supposed to like kind of like go through this little labyrinth of a sort, and deal with all the head crabs and zombies as they pop up. But their mistake was they put tables. So I just teleport to a table, look over, peer over, be like, and then like teleport down quickly, and then teleport onto another table, the next one. Like it was very noob and scary friendly. You know, like someone like me who is not good with horror games, I could still like get through those sections with teleportation. But the second time round, I was really glad that I did just walk everywhere because it felt very natural, the movement in the game. I kind of tended to only use the teleport strategically if I needed to like get out of a situation, couldn't run fast enough. Or with Jeff.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Jeff. Let's talk about Jeff. So do you want to set up like who Jeff is, Ellen, for those who haven't played the game?
All right. So it's both my favorite and least favorite part of the game. It's one of those classic, you need to hide from this boss and don't let it anywhere near you, otherwise it will instantly kill you bosses. You get to a vodka brewery factory place, and inside there is a particular zombie that is really like he's huge, and he's terrifying, and he can't see. So the only way he knows where you are is by sound. So it's like it's ultimate stealth thing, but you're in a vodka factory. So you've got lots of bottles that you can throw and smash to distract him while you run around. But he is terrifying, and like he's called Jeff because you meet another person there who's like, "Oh, hi, I'll be careful of Jeff. Just don't make too much noise and he'll leave you alone." But the thing is that Jeff's sort of in your way and you have to get past him somehow. So, yeah, it's terrifying. There's some moments. The worst bit is you have to get in a lift with him.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, I've never been so scared in all my life in a game.
With your hand over your mouth,
yeah, that's the other thing. You can't. Alyx, sometimes there's spores that are being released by all the horrible growths. And they sometimes make Alyx cough, and you have no control over that. So you either have to get breathing apparatus or literally cover your hand with your mouth in VR. And I was so impressed by it, but also like it was the scariest thing ever. But there's so many times I was just like standing in my room going with a VR hands.
So during that bit, on my first playthrough, I was so, because I don't like horror games. Like I was so scared. Yeah. I had to go get my partner Kai and say, "Hey, can you come in my office and just sit on the sofa and just be there? Just if I say something, reply. Like, don't even have to look at what I'm doing, but like I just need to get past this bit so I can carry on playing this game I'm enjoying. But I can't. It was the bit where so you trap him in like a big storage room or something. You lock him in. You're like, oh, there we go, got rid of Jeff. And then you're doing a puzzle where you got to like switch some electric switches to power up the elevator, and you're following the trail of wires, and then you see they're leading into the room you're locked in. It's like, oh, I've got to let him back out now. Like, I need to go with that. I was like, take the headset off. Kai, can you come babysit me for a bit?
It's possibly the funniest and meanest thing I've ever seen in a game where they're like, "Hey, you got him in there, you got him out the way. Now you have to get him out."
It does have it has the best joke in the game as well, I think, which is when you ring Russell and you're like, "Oh, I met Jeff." And Russell's like, "Oh, great! We need all the help we can get."
Yeah.
Alex, like, I don't think he'll be helping us.
Yeah.
There's also a really cute thing of like Russell's like, "Oh, the drinks there were really nice. If you could bring a bottle back for me, and if you get an achievement if you pick up a bottle and keep it in your inventory until the end of the level,
nice.
And it's like you've brought a drink back." I kept it in my inventory for the entire game just in case. Like, just in case, you meet Russell
when you say your
inventory,
do you mean like you're carrying it?
The two little carry spaces.
Oh, you can put vodka in there.
You can put a bottle in there so you can save it for later.
I didn't know you could put vodka in there. I did put on, so I don't know if either you realize it, but if you wear hats in the game, which is worth doing, because if you go under a barnacle, they just eat the hat rather than you.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
It's amazing. And also because the guy you meet, the guy you meet has like a hat with all spikes on it. And that's evident, like, that's his protection. He's like added it.
So Larry, he met. I was wearing the hat, and he was like, "Oh yeah, nice hat, by the way."
Yeah,
like, there's like a little extra voice line. I was like, and I did like, I don't know if I got the footage of it. But I kind of did a little hat tip.
Yeah, all the way through, I was like thumbs upping, like pointing, like.
I know. Well, I was doing it. Then I was suddenly like, because you were kind of mentioning it earlier when you first got scared with the one at the train, and you can kind of see you panic. And there was so many moments where I'm like that. And I'm like, I don't like this, because it's always almost always my footage we use in these podcasts, and I'm like, I feel so much more personal now. Now I'm like, oh, I better not like pick my nose or anything, because it's like everything's me. And if I do get scared or like you can see me messing up, it's like, it's almost like motion capture of me when I'm playing it. Like, I'm gonna be so much more picky with the bits I use.
Well, talking about hands and headgear. At one point, there's traffic cones in the game.
Okay.
You can put the traffic cones on your head.
I did not.
And I've got footage. I put one on my head, and I've got the footage. And like my hands, it's in our video on Outside Extra this week about the PSVR games. And my hands are just like, so excited.
Stag do Alyx, you're playing.
Yeah. And you can put the buckets on your head as well, but you can't see a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew about the gas mask and the hats. I can't think of and any other things I put on.
Before we move away from Jeff, like, what happens if he gets you?
I never got
Yeah, he
by
like bleeds, or he goes blubs on you, and then
Like,
like
yeah.
it's just like
I was too
it's
scared.
like an instant death. Yeah,
yeah.
It's just it like that's it.
And once you've died, it's like, because the actual, once you got you and you're like, okay, I'm dead, your brain goes straight back to like mechanical, where was the checkpoint, blah, blah, blah. And then the next time you go, you're less scared. It's really the unknowing that I think makes it so scary. The first time is, I don't want to know what happens when he catches me. Was there any other, for you, Ollie, other kind of like standout moments like that, or like particular locations that you really enjoyed?
There is, but I think maybe we should do a spoiler warning and do it at the end, because my favourite location was the ending. And
Oh my god! Yeah. I
need
to talk about the ending. It's amazing, and I don't want to spoil.
Okay.
Loads.
Yeah. No, I really want to dig into that, especially with Ellen and Ellen's view of it, because obviously that's the bit that links most with other Half-Life games. So I just really want to dissect what you take from it. But yeah, we'll get to that later. But now might be a good time. You said we had quite a lot of messages from the community, so I wonder if there's any ones that are appropriate for what we've been talking about.
Okay. Jasco Benji on YouTube. Oh, these are going to be difficult, actually, Ellen, because they're all kind of Half-Life 2 related.
That's all right. I know some things.
Okay.
I know some Half-Life 2 things.
Says Jasco Benji says, do you think this game plays it safe compared to Half-Life 2 in terms of level variety? In Half-Life 2, every chapter had different settings, gameplay mechanics, whereas Half-Life Alyx mostly sticks with the same kinds of environments and gameplay throughout.
Do you want to answer that, Ollie?
Yeah, I mean, this game, I think it feels short. It may be because you're in it, and it doesn't outstay its welcome. Like, it doesn't have as much variety as Half-Life 2, but also it feels like you kind of get through it a lot quicker.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't, Half-Life 2 in my mind feels like days and days of gameplay, I think, because there is so many different things you do. It probably isn't.
Can you think of another game that has as much variety as Half-Life 2? That's the thing. Like, it's always unfair to compare it to the game that came before it, because like people don't make games like that anymore, really.
Yeah.
Like, I've not even played Half-Life 2, and I know that it's got like so many different locations and like classic, like, and it is like 1 minute you're driving by the sea and the next minute you're in like Ravenholm and it's all scary. It is very. Whereas with that Half-Life Alyx, it's one journey. Like it limits itself story wise by being like you're just going through this one city, so you can't suddenly find yourself by the coast or whatever. Yeah.
I mean, Half-Life 2, it does do the same thing. Like, it never cuts. Is kind of one of the things the Half-Life series does. It is endless. Like, you could track it. But I guess it feels like, I think because you got the vehicles and stuff, you do feel like you're covering like more physical distance.
You do go a really long. You got a boat and a car, and both of them you drive for about an hour. Like, you go a really long way in that game.
Yeah. This is definitely like a much more contained story. But I don't think that's bad. Like, I think that. I think they'd have to spend if they were introducing that many new mechanics, I think they'd have to spend so long teaching them all, and then like how long are you going to spend doing each one until you're then doing something else? Like, if they're designing this with the mind like this is introduction to VR for a lot of people, like I feel like they kind of do a lot of the obvious things that work well in VR. Like, they're doing the puzzles, and they're like physical manipulation puzzles, which are puzzles you couldn't do in like a 2D game. And like even the fact that it's almost kind of like a survival horror, it's just because that just fits VR. Like, you can't move fast in VR because people feel sick, so they're normally slow. Like, then like the resource gathering and being in VR is scary, so it almost feels like the VR kind of set what this game was going to be, rather than them thinking up a story or a setting they wanted to do and then fitting the game around it.
There was just one Half-Life 2 thing I really wanted in this game that I was looking forward to for the whole of the game. I was like, it's going to pop up at some point. In Half-Life 2, you can control the antlines. Like, you have the little... you have a little thing that you like shake and they come up and then you throw it. And when I saw the antlines, I was like, oh, I'm going to get my army back and like run through, like, taking everyone out. I was so excited for it. But yeah, I mean, obviously that's just a tiny little nitpick. Because like the game's like, it is brilliant, isn't it? Let's be honest. This is going to be a top 10. There's no doubt about that. Like we were saying about like the, how do they introduce all of these mechanics? Because I think like
the one thing I love about this game is the fact that it is constantly introducing new mechanics to you. You're constantly getting like a new weapon every once in a while, or and then you've got all your upgrades if you want to do that as well. And so you're constantly being revealed a new thing, whether it be a new toy to play with or a new thing about the world that you're in, or a new, like, there's the level where you get to all like the mines, like you walk into one level and there's just a bunch of lasers and it's like time for the mine puzzle thing. And so although there isn't as much variety as I've seen in the Half-Life 2 games, like it's still got so much variety compared to, like, it does that thing where the whole game is basically a tutorial. Like, they've obviously designed it for new players, but it's also just, hey, here's a new thing for you to play with. Hey, here's a new thing for you. Like, everything right up until the end, which we'll talk about later, which is amazing. And, like, I always felt like, ooh, shiny new thing to play with. So even though the environments were basically the same city, like, I was like, new thing, ooh, spooky hotel. Okay, I'm now in a zoo with huge creatures that want to eat my face off. And, like, there was enough variety for me as someone who'd never played VR, never played Half-Life. I was like, cool, interesting.
They even managed to, like, have variety in, like, infected area. There was, like, the one that was, like, all orange. There was the one that had, like... the little like crap hat things. Like,
the
they even had like different versions of like exclusion zone area, which they don't really exist in Half-Life. Like before now, you don't really have exclusion zone stuff. So not to the level it is in this game with like the goo and stuff like that, like you have in the
Yeah, they talked about that once again with the developer commentary. It's like they'll design, like, there's that area where they got like the big barrels of like the orange goo, and they're saying that was obviously like a team that came in to like disinfect the area. But then, like, they either, like, gave up or got killed or something. Then they say that, like, when designing it, they'll be planning it. And they'll know that a lot of it's to a level that no one's actually going to pick up on an individual thing. But by them just doing it and them considering it, it just makes the world feel more real. Like, subconsciously, we can tell when it's a developer's just thought, oh, yeah, and we could put barrels in the corner because the corner's looking empty and we need set dressing. It feels very organic, even the more urban areas. Like there's an area where you discover like a little, it's like an optional area, so you might have not found it, but it's like a little hideout from someone, and it's like a little kind of like resistance fighter, and he's got all of his trinkets and toys, and it felt like so much more detailed, maybe because it was in a small area than anywhere else, but it was so full of little tiny stuff, and I just spent ages just like nosing in on like, oh, what kind of person is this? Like, what kind of personality are they? And there was so much there, and I think it being in VR helped that because you are looking closer and like picking things up and stuff.
Yeah, I think the word you used there was really good, like discover. I know it's like, you find it, but like I always felt like I was discovering stories as I was going. The world building in this game like is brilliant. Like, as you said, they didn't just shove things there because it was they need to fill space. They put it there because they knew that you would look at it and wonder about it, and like it's just it's very intuitive, and they really tap into your curiosity, which is even I think it's heightened in a VR game because you're in there, you want to see everything. Like one of my favorite things is in the room where the zombie jumps out at me and I got scared. If you go in there, you can pick up a floppy disk, and then Russell tells you about floppy disks and explains what floppy disks are to Alyx, and it's just like. And then also I had the kind of daunting realization that it was also explaining it to some of the players.
The majority of the other people played it as well.
I was like, oh, this isn't for me, is it?
Can I?
But like, yeah.
Can I say something that's probably going to be controversial? Because you're saying about like how everything was put in there for a reason, everything has a reason to be there. What is the point of those 3D puzzles every time you unlock the door? Like, I hated them so much.
Those ones where you're like,
all of them. Like, after I did them all once, I was like, I've done them now. And then, like, even from a world building standpoint, why are they even there? And like, if my screwdriver can see them, can it not just solve them? Like, do I have to? So anyway, I looked up a mod to remove them, and it does exist, but you have to do it with a clean save. So I was like, I just suffer.
Yeah, I mean. at some point, like, they're making a video game, and that's, you know, like, why are there just 2 like shotgun shells randomly spread out? You know, even you're like, at certain point, they are making a video game, and that's they wanted a puzzle which plays with like perspective and like manipulating thing in 3D space, and that's what all of those puzzles are trying to do. But something else from hearing what they were saying is, like, you can hear them constantly needing to make like compromises because of VR, where they would, you know, go about doing things the way that they used to do, you know, whether on Portal games, previous Half-Life, whatever, and they would start off making it that way, and they'd realize that it just doesn't work. And that's one of the stuff that's kind of is really interesting to hear about, and they would eventually get to a place where it does work, but it'd always never quite be the same. You know, they talk about like movement, like the way that like jumping, the way you jump works, and even things like going up an elevator. Like originally it made loads of people sick. And so you might notice every time you go up an elevator, they really restrict your view to the outside world, and kind of almost you're always like looking for, and there is that didn't make people sick. And so they originally had an area where it's when you're first you meet one of the Vortigons at the top of the hotel, and you got this elevator, and it was going to be this big thing. As you're going up the elevator, it reveals the view, and in the end you can't really see it because they have to block so much of the view off. So it feels like VR does so many amazing things that could just never be fun not being in VR. But it feels like a lot of the things that are fun in normal games often just aren't as good. Like the normal gunfights, I feel like, as cool as it is when you're like ducking behind cover and like shooting around, like that's cool. But if I'm like trying to strafe or be dynamic, or like, you know, I would like jump around and stuff, like that doesn't really work. I feel like it much more works when you're planted in a single space. And this game is really kind of trying to straddle a line where I think it's trying to appease everyone, and I don't know if it always quite like hits it.
Well, I think it's very telling that the 2 best parts of the game, you don't have your gun or you can't use it. So, because they're just not, you know, the part with Jeff in the ending, you don't have your gun at the end. You have the, well, I'm going to spoil it, but but I think that the puzzles that you do in the world are amazing. There's that one where you have to like turn a bike tire and then jam something in the spokes.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And it's like, that is so cool. Like, that is great. Yeah, and there's one where there's like you got to put a crank handle over a piece of wire so you can only turn it a little bit. And it's like, that is so good. Like, comparatively to like, you know, this like...
Yeah, the more abstract ones.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong, I did really like that light puzzle that was you drag the orbs to do the light rays. Yeah, that one was awesome. That was like, because that wouldn't work on your telly, but like, in VR it was really cool doing those.
Yeah, the thing is, like, the elephant in the room is that like hacking and unlocking things in games often is a bit boring.
Yeah,
like, because I've been recently playing through the original BioShock on my own channel, and I've been having a lot with it, and I loved hacking in it. Like, the actual game itself is really fun. Like, it would be a solid mobile game. In all honesty, I think, you know, 2K should just shove that out as a mobile game.
I think they did release BioShock as a mobile game.
Maybe
like the whole game.
The whole game is a mobile game.
Oh, the whole BioShock. Yeah. No, I remember that. But like, I think like they could just do the puzzles, like. But the thing is, it gets to a point where it's like, oh my gosh, I'm doing so many like unlocking parts, and it just kind of gets a bit annoying to a point. And I think like at the beginning with those like, ooh, let's line up the things, it felt like, ooh, cool, I can do this. But then like by the final one, and there's all like things moving around and you have to avoid it, and then every time it failed and I had to start again. I was like, oh,
and you're doing 2 or 3 in a row at one point. You have to keep doing that. But the other puzzle they do, which is the like trace the wire along the wall, I thought that one was really cool.
I love that one.
Yeah, they're really cool because like,
that was great.
You're like leaning in cupboards and like going behind things.
Yeah,
and,
it's because it's 3D in the world, and it's in your actual space that, you know, Alyx is in when you're doing it as well. And there's physicals and those little snappy things when you got to go close to them.
I was like, oh, do I have a hand? Even though I know they're not there, but they're just like,
Any more anything from the community before we kind of get towards more spoiler territory and kind of the ending of the game?
It's quite a big question, quite difficult, but I think it's very important for us to think about. It's more of a question. This is from Kelp Goblin on YouTube. They say it's more of a question about the VR industry, but would you rather there's more high quality, big budget PC VR games like this one, Or would you rather have that time and effort be put into VR becoming as accessible as possible? And this is something that I've been thinking about quite a lot. And it's like, so basically I've got a pretty minor back injury. Like, it's really not that bad. But in this game, you spend quite a lot of it crouched over. And I was like, man, that's like really difficult to do that for a long period of time, like going along a tunnel. And then I was thinking, like, if you had any mobility issues, or you're missing a limb, or your eyes, you don't have good vision, you just can't play this game. Like, you literally can't.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to play it. Like, and it kind of, on one hand, I'm someone that's like, not everything has to be for everyone. But I think when it comes to this, it's a bit like, it's really closed off. It's really inaccessible, not only for like, you need to be fully able-bodied. You also need to be able to afford a PC that can run it. You need space to play it. Like, it is like, the things you need are getting more and more and more. And it's like, it is a side game, but by the ending, I was like, is it really? Or is this like, you could be a disabled Half-Life fan for life and you just would never be able to play this.
Yeah. I will say that there are quite good accessibility options, surprisingly so. Like, obviously, it can only go so far. You can play it all one-handed. It is possible. Obviously, they'll change certain things because, normally the way you do your guns or you need your light, you can do, because they were even talking about, they wanted it to be as open to as many different headsets as possible and configuration. Right. So, they would think about what you can do in the Valve Index and moving each individual finger and stuff. But then they would know that there's lower end headsets where you might only have one controller, lower resolution, and they would test all of them as well. But obviously, that's only going to go and get you so far. Like, I think I think it would be cool, obviously, to get more things like this. Like, if someone said, we're making a new Half-Life game, do you want it to be VR or not VR? Like, I'd probably say not VR, like, personally. But, like, I think these are super interesting. But, like, I'm totally happy with what we're getting, where we get games like, like Beat Saber and, like, social experiences. Like, I love hanging out in VR with people. Like, I mentioned earlier, me and Ollie like playing like mini golf, and especially like during like lockdown and stuff. It's just so nice when it's like a group of people and you're chatting, and even just having, as I said, with the audio where you see someone talking, they're over there. It just feels like so much more like you're having a real social experience. So that's what gets me more interested, rather than them saying like, oh, the next Call of Duty is going to be in VR or whatever. I'm like, I don't care. Like, I'm just not interested in that. Like, I don't want to be shooting realistic people in VR anyway. That's like almost like another topic. What about you, Ellen? Like, because did you have a VR headset now, or did you only have the one you borrowed to play through this?
Only had the one that I borrowed to play through this. As Outside Extra, we do have a PSVR headset, but Luke has that. We have one between the two of us, and it's at Luke's house, so
and he's
I can't
winning.
play it at the moment. Yes. I'm hoping that we're going to be like, please, Sony, can I have a PSVR 2, please? But like, I think it's a really important question, because like my sister has physical disabilities that she lives with, and like, there's all of these things you've got to take into consideration. And like, there is a conversation where they're like, oh, you need big budget games like Half-Life to encourage people to sink that cost into a VR headset and all that sort of stuff. But also at the same time, what's the point in sinking all that money into it if it's not accessible? So, is it a little bit putting the cart before the horse if you're not focusing on the accessibility? Is it like a chicken and the egg situation? Like, do we need to make VR more accessible and then do the big budget things? Or do we do the big budget things and then make them more accessible? I would prefer the accessibility first so that more people can play. But like, when I had the headset, like, just even in like the Valve Steam VR room where you're just like in this fancy house on the mountainside, this was during lockdown, so like in 2021 we hadn't been outside for the longest time, so I was like to my sister, I was like, Emily, come in here, just put this headset on, and she was just like walking around being like, this is so cool, like just teleporting around the space. So like, I think the main thing we've got to focus on is like making sure that people can afford those things, but at the same time we've got to make sure that there are those meaty titles that people feel like, yes, I will sink that amount of money into it if I need to as well. It's a bit of a balancing act. But like, honestly, I think in terms of like games to get people first playing, I think like Beat Saber is the the first one. It's like dance mats, it's Wii Sports, it's that sort of stuff. And that's where, that's baby's first VR game, which also then like has an amazing difficulty curve that if you want to get really into it, you can. But then like for people who are like, I don't really want to play like an arcade game, you can be like, Half-Life Alyx, this is your intro to VR. This is really good, but be careful, there's spooky things. And I think basically accessibility is really important. There's no point in making like a fancy game if hardly anyone can play it. I've been having the difficulty of trying to find people to talk to about this game.
Yeah, because no one else has played it.
No one else has played it because it's so difficult to get get a hands-on kit that will play it.
Yeah.
I was really fortunate that I was loaned the equipment for it, and that my PC that was also loaned to me for work, I was able to use it. So like not everyone is able to have this experience, and I'm kind of like sitting here going, I want everyone to play this game because it's so good. I just want more people to be able to play it.
Yeah.
And it's good that we have a game like that. Like maybe this is like a nice catalyst to, encourage, a bit more accessibility.
Yeah, it's hard because it's obviously, there are things they can do, but like to a certain extent, if it's like the thing with VR is you're in that world and physically manipulating things, and at a certain point, like if the accessibility gets to a level, where they're adding options where you're, doing that with button presses, you're kind of losing the wonder of being in VR. There's always going to be, a bit pinging in a headset, and if you're able to like look around, like that in itself can be amazing, and go on a submarine voyage, like that can be incredible. There's a lot of, like innovation in terms of, for people for like long-term care and hospital, being able to have headsets just to, feel like they're somewhere else.
Yeah.
And I think I feel like this can just live alongside that, and I don't think the onus needs to be on, Valve or Sony or whoever to make sure everyone can experience it, because if that lessens what the potential of this technology is, it's sort of like, what's the point, because they could just make games the way they already have been. And, for the most part, accessibility in the last, even 3 years has just gone through the roof for the amount of options and how much better it's gotten.
Like PlayStation have just Xbox already has their adaptive controller, and PlayStation have just announced theirs.
The
thing is, I will also say, I think that like for certain disabilities, I think sometimes VR might be more accessible, because instead of having to press fiddly buttons on a controller, you can just move and pick something up.
True,
and you press one trigger. Because my sister absolutely and me also adore the Lego games. Like it's something that we can play together. They're very accessible and friendly, and it just means if she messes up, it's not too bad, and there's anything like really like, oh my gosh, loads of quick time events. But then in one of the DC superheroes games, she was like, I've got to this point and I think the game's bugged out because I'm pressing the button and doing it as fast as I can, but it's not doing it. And it was just that there was a button mashing quick time event that she couldn't press the button fast enough for. And like now that there's in some like God of War Ragnarok had it, and I think Spider-Man had it, where you can be like, no QTAs, if it's a button mash, I just want to press and hold the button.
I always turn that on just because
because literally just I find it difficult sometimes, and I'm like, I'm the able-bodied person like between me and my sister when it comes to our hands anyway, and it's just like my sister was I put the headset on my sister in VR, and she was like, I'm going to go there. I'm going to pick this thing up. Cool. I picked that thing up. Whereas it might be more fiddly when you're like, it's slightly an abstract from it as well. You're slightly back from it. Whereas, when you're immersed, but like, you've got to take into consideration people who won't have the use of both of their hands and things like that. So, and like I think there is possibly an option in Half-Life Alyx to play it sat down completely.
Yeah, there is. I think
so. There is at least that. There's a lot of VR games. PSVR, most of them are just like you just sit down and it's fine. So I'll be interested to see what they do with that with PSVR too. But they're quite on it at the moment. They're at least way more aware of these things. So, we're working towards better accessibility,
and
which
then
is good.
The other thing for accessibility is just for non-gamers as well. Like my dad would never play a game. He's played games in VR, and I'm like, we're just just move your arm as you do in real life, and it will do it on screen. They're so good for that.
It's like it's the Wii. Like the motion controls.
Absolutely.
It's so much easier than like my dad bought himself an Xbox just so an Xbox 360 years ago just so he could use it for Netflix. This was the early days of Netflix, And so I was like, right, Dad, I'm going to buy you some games, and I got him Batman Arkham Asylum, because for me, I think that's one of it's a slightly more, new player friendly game. And then also LA Noire, because he likes murder mysteries and things like that. So I was like, oh, this must be interesting. And it's all conversation options and it's all quite, and I told him like the weirdness of like, you'll say maybe and then they'll shout something horrible that you didn't expect. Like, that's what happens, just so you know. And then he was like, I tried and I couldn't. Whereas if I'd given him like a Wii and a Wii remote, he'd be like, woo, play tennis, done,
Yeah, but then he also might just be like, just get bored and be like, but, there's not much to these video games, they're not art.
Yeah. I think it's because there's just less translation, isn't there, between like moving your actual arm and I always think about that when I'm talking to people, because I play Street Fighter, we use an arcade stick, and I say to people like, look, the light kick is here, the medium kick is the middle one, and the strong kick is the end one. And they're like, oh, that's really confusing. And I'm like, holding a controller, it's like holding a piece of bread or something, and you have these buttons all over it. Whereas this is just in order, like, and it's completely flat. And it's so much easier to think about. It's the same with like, when you play.
Never
games
go to one of Ollie's parties, by the way, Ellen. They're awful. It's just him shouting at everyone. Your controllers are like bread. It makes sense. Come on.
But it's the same with someone who doesn't play games, or you give them a game that uses two sticks, and they're like, looking up, looking down, like they just can't.
Yeah, or camera controls. Yeah. Wild.
Okay. Should we go into the ending?
Yeah. Was there no more comments that were standing out before?
Quite a lot
then?
of. Let's do a very quick fire. Ellen, I'll go to you first.
Feels
a
like
lot of people say this. So Ali DeBear on YouTube says a lot of people say this is the best VR game on the market. Do you agree?
Yes. I mean, out of the ones that I've played, at least, I think it's a solid little adventure. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It's got those comedic bits in it that, ease the tension and are also just really fun. I think it's a fantastic way to show off what you can do in VR, while also it's basically just Valve showing off for like 15 hours. So,
That's such a good way to put it. It's just Valve showing off for 15 hours. That's great.
Joe, Morg DW on the Bonus Points Discord asked, do you think this is for VR what Half-Life 1 and 2 were for PC games?
No, I think not, just because VR is still so small. I feel like it can't have that impact because it's like it didn't enter the conversation, like the wider conversation beyond, maybe the 2 weeks after the release, because not enough people were playing it. And I think for that reason it couldn't. And I don't like, I was kind of half expecting, because I'd played a lot of VR games before, and there was always a slight bit of jank or clunkiness, and how are we gonna work out doing walking in VR and blah 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 blah. And I kind of was half hoping that Valve had some secret sauce that they worked out where they had kind of ironed out all of those problems. And I think as great as it isn't, I think a lot of those, it appears for foreseeable future, are just inherent to having a game in VR. And I think until we're all on biodirectional treadmills, like, I think that's just what VR's games are going to be like for a while. So I don't think it was a revolution. I think it was more just like a higher level of quality and a refinement, rather than here's something new you've not seen before. It's like, oh, here's just something as good as it's ever looked, and a full length game. I think that's where it stands out.
Yeah, and also
I think.
Sorry, go on
After you.
Oh, I didn't get to mention it earlier on, but like, in terms of it being like a AAA game, like the art direction and the graphics are like stunning. Amazing. Like the art direction, because it doesn't really look real, but it doesn't not look real. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like it kind of looks.
They found that good middle ground. Yeah.
Yeah, I really noticed it when I was looking up. I was looking up characters for something. I think I was talking to someone, and I looked at the renders, and I was like, oh, actually, when they're not in the game, they kind of look a bit like painterly. And they do look the same in the game. You just don't notice because everything kind of looks like that. But it's a really good.
Yeah. So one of the things they were realizing is a lot of things like, say, particle effects. So normally the way they do particle effects, and when they're done badly, you kind of notice they're all kind of on 2D planes that as you move, they'll adjust to face you, and it normally looks fine. But of course, with this, like they're rendering it slightly different for each eye, and that just doesn't work at all. So there's a lot of things like that where they had to completely redo the way that they did it, because of just the fact that it's almost like a 3D game in a way.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of really helps it.
Yeah, no, it's gorgeous. Like the beginning where you're like talking to Russell in the apartment, and I was just like hypnotized by it, because it was just so, I was just like, it's perfect. It like the animation of it, and then also like they don't fall into the uncanny valley, which they could do, especially in VR.
Yeah.
But yet to go back to earlier, like with the kind of like, is it going to be the same thing as like when Half-Life 1 and 2 happened? I think if it comes out on PSVR 2, which is, it's a big if, and it's me crossing my fingers, all of my fingers, it could be a Breaking Bad situation where like everyone discovered how good it was way after it came out.
Yeah, I think that will happen. I think there will be a come around in maybe about 5 years or so when there's
when they release like finally able to play it. Yeah,
like the new Meta, whatever they're going to Meta Quest, like when there's one of them which is powerful enough to play it and affordable, where people like if that reaches a level, and then suddenly there'll be a whole bunch of new people, or even if they release it on PlayStation VR 2, because the PlayStation VR 1 that sold a load, that could be a big resurgence if they end up porting it there, which I reckon they will. They got it right.
I hope so.
I don't know if the game is complex enough to take off. Like the game is very, very basic. Like where if you played it on a 2D screen, it would probably be quite boring. Like the game's amazing. I absolutely loved it. I don't want to say that I didn't like it, but it is very, very basic. Like the fact you can't change the hand you're holding your gun in, you can't really carry anything. Like that upgrade system's quite basic. Like it is very simple. You know, the skirmishes with the enemies are very basic. Because you're in it, obviously it feels like a lot more. But I have done thing is, the game, there's some of its parts is amazing, but I have done all of these things individually in other VR games better. But the fact that this has all of them in one is amazing. But like, you know, not being able to, when I first played it and I found out you couldn't change the hand that your gun was in, I was like, what? Like, I'm just trying to let go of my gun and I can't. Like, it's stuck to my hand. Just stuff like that felt weird. I don't know. I
think you have to like set it in settings that you're left or right handed, and then that's it. Like, you know.
Any more, Ollie?
Well, the rest of them are kind of about the ending or after the fact, so I think we should.
Okay, well, let's dive into it. So this is your big warning for us talking about the ending of this game, and it is like hugely spoilable. So if you do think, even if you don't have a VR headset now, if you do think you are going to play it in the future, I really recommend skipping ahead a little bit, maybe until, I guess it'll be the last thing we talk about, so maybe until we get to the list. I want to start with you, Ellen, because obviously you hadn't played previous Half-Life games. Well, actually, let's start with just the lead up when you go to the vault, you know, where they're containing the G-Man, just that whole kind of psychedelic section. Like, what was your reaction to kind of going through that whole part?
Well, like, you get the bit where they take away everything you have, you know, that classic bit in a video game where like, we're going to take all your things, and I was like, oh no, this is going to be so scary. But then I went in, and like you're walking through the house that is like changing around you and everything. And then I picked up a frying pan, and I was like, oh my God, I can pick up a frying pan. This is it. Like, I was still discovering things at the end of the game. And I was like, I can hit things with the frying pan. This is great. And then it's just that bit where you get the power, like the electrical, like stuff coming through your hands, and you're like, I'm Iron Man, I am a Sith Lord, I'm doing all of these things. And it was the most like satisfying level, like ending level of a video game that I've ever played, I think, because it's such it's such a hit, like a power fantasy moment where you're just like, I am the most powerful person here. These things that were like really scary earlier on in the game and, you know, could easily have taken me out, I'm just like, you're gone, pow. And it was, you know, the way that I was playing it on the Index, like they have like the little hook around your hand, so I was literally able to be like hand splayed out, like you know, like I was doing magic spells in D&D or something, like, you know. And it was just I was just like, this is the best thing that I have ever done in a video game ever. I'd already been sold on the idea of VR like from previous experiences, and I'd really enjoyed the whole game. But then I was like, the culmination of that to that moment. And it was brilliant because it has that, you know, that quiet moment just before where you're kind of going through this house and everything's a bit weird and everything's changing around you. And it's really clever. Like, if I was just playing a first person game doing that section, I would be like, wow, this is really cool. It's just, you know, it's the, you know, the horror game trick if you turn around and something's different behind you. But they did it in a way less, you know, boring way, I suppose, that happens a lot. I just, and then suddenly you're just like, okay, here's the bit where you have like lightning coming out of your hands, have fun. And I was just like, thanks Mel, this is what I want.
It's kind of a homage as well, isn't it, Ollie, to the end of Half-Life 2?
Yeah, I was waiting for that moment, because at the end of in Half-Life 2 you have the gravity gun, and then at the end they power it up so you can use it to shoot people and like send them flying.
And they take away all your guns as well.
So I was, and also it's like being a Vortigaunt, because they've got the same power, haven't they? So I was actually
that's what that energy is, isn't it? Because they're sucking the Vortigaunt's energy. That's literally what you are using.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah. Because I didn't really fully understand like kind of the lore stuff, and I know I joked about it earlier, but the developer commentary is amazing, by the way.
Yeah, it's just like piracy, the fact that we're listening to you reel it off.
So not only is it just commentary, like they'll do stuff and they'll explain about how like when the enemies walk around, their feet never slide, and how they have a custom part, and then they'll be talking about it, and then they go like, here's an enemy, and then they'll appear and it'll be like, you can walk around them and you can see the way they face you, or they'll be explaining about like the way interactable items work, and then a bunch of interactable items will appear because you're in just the game as normal. It's not like a separate thing, and it's all stuff you can interact with, but you can see like the green lines that you can slide past along. Like it's the best developer commentary they've done. But what was I going to say? Yeah, so in it what were we talking about before?
We're talking about
completely blank.
Walking around
the lore and
the apartment building, zapping.
Yeah. Sorry, the lore. So they explained about kind of what all of like those cables going up to the vault are, and them taking the energy to contain the gene. Like they explained all of this stuff, and I don't know whether they expected you to like infer it in your first playthrough, but like I'm kind of glad I had that to be honest, just to kind of be like, you know, the environmental storytelling's great. Sometimes it's nice if someone like a little voice in your head just explains what's going on, so you know exactly what's happening.
So the ending. And I say this all the time, I don't want to be like hyperbolic or dramatic. I think the last couple of hours of this game are like probably some of the best art I've ever experienced in my entire life. Like I found myself with my jaw hanging open, and I was standing there and I was like, I cannot believe what I'm witnessing. Like what I'm seeing in this game, I've written down in my notes, like it doesn't feel like next gen. It feels like next. Like when you open that door and the room is reflected, and not just like reflected, it's reflected at like a 30-degree angle, so it looks mad. And I was walking through it and I was literally like, I've never seen anything like this in real life or in a game or anything ever in my life. There's a bit where cutlery flies out a drawer, and I grabbed one of the forks and I was looking at it. I was literally looking at this fork, and then I kind of let go of it, and it didn't just go like whoop, it like low grav like spun back, and I honestly was like, I felt like I'd sinned God. Like I was literally like, I cannot believe what I'm seeing right now. And Joe, like you'll know, like, sorry Ellen, if you're ever going to play Disco Elysium, I'm going to spoil it. But you know the bit with the cryptid?
It's fine.
In Disco Elysium?
Yeah.
I felt like that. Like I felt like I was seeing something that people on Earth should not see. Like I was literally like, what the hell is going on in this game? Like, and then you go up, and you're meant to be saving Gordon Freeman, right? Who's like the lead character of Half-Life. And obviously I loved Half-Life for like 20 years, 25 years, basically my whole life. And then there's this bit where like you're holding on to these two cables, and the door is like open in front of you. And I was literally standing there and I was thinking like, I've like loved this guy for 25 years. And I'm standing here with my hands like this, and I'm waiting for this door to open. And I was literally like, this is the best thing I've ever experienced in my entire life. And like, I literally cannot believe that it exists. And like, just every single thing so basically from Jeff onwards, the game is like untouchable. Like especially as like a VR fan, as a game fan, as a Half-Life fan, anything, I've never seen anything like it. Like it was, and I was texting my brother like, oh, the game's really basic. Yeah, it's pretty much like it's pretty. I was like, it's pretty boring, to be honest with you. And then I got to there, and I was like, I've never seen anything like this in my life. Like, genuinely.
I've
That's
just
why I don't want to
sent
spoil
on
it for anyone.
Discord a screenshot from my notes, and all it is ending gives me chills with I think 4 exclamation marks. Then what did it mean for Ellen? Question mark.
Yeah, that's a good question.
A lot of it goes to the very ending. So do you know about like G-Man, and obviously you've heard of Gordon Freeman? Like how much had you picked up through proxy of this universe?
Well, like I know of the character, like Gordon Freeman. I know is like the main character of Half-Life. He's the one that you play as, silent protagonist. Amazing, never heard him speak, but just hits things with a crowbar. Like I played Stray earlier last year, and I found a crowbar on a tram and got really excited. So I still am like, oh my god, Half-Life. I get it. I know enough, and like so I was like, oh cool, I'm gonna. And then I was like, wait. That's the other guy. when you finally see him, I'm like, that's not Gordon Freeman. Oh, he's the bad one. And I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, and it was really funny because I was like watching it going, and it's that thing, like, I'm like, hey, I don't get all of the references here, but I was enjoying it knowing that, there were 100% Half-Life huge fans who would be freaking out, and I just had a little smile on my face being like, they know what they were doing. They knew what they were doing.
It was like Luke with his driving games. You gave us a little pat on the head. Go play with your crowbar, boys.
You have your fun with your Half-Life. You have fun. But the thing is, at the same time, I was still like, this is really, because like this is intriguing as hell. Like, what does this mean? Like, I still like, and I thought like, if I had zero knowledge of Half-Life, I would still be like, hang on, who's this person? Why do they have a briefcase? Why are they offering a thing for me? And then like, there's a thing at the end where like, oh my gosh, like someone gets shot and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, this is a lot of intrigue. And I love this. Like, is this setting up a sequel? Yes. Like, I want more of this.
Yeah.
And I just, it bumped up Half-Life up at the games on my games to play list, but it's unfortunately extremely long and new games keep coming out and it's my job to cover them. So like, I'm like, oh, come on, I need to find time to play the Half-Life games again. But like, I was, I've not spoiled anything. My colleague Luke has played through it. Like, he's the big Half-Life fan. So if there's anything on our channel that covers Half-Life, he's usually the one who's written those bits. But like, I was just like sitting there going, oh, I need Luke to play this game so badly. I've been, diligently avoiding giving Luke loads of spoilers, but I'm like, Luke, it's really good. Like, I love it. It's so good.
I normally think that nostalgia plays are like a bit of a cheap trick, but like when it's this good and it's done this well, like the fact that the apartment you go through is more or less the start of Half-Life 2, and you have the people in the blue, the chore jackets there, like to the point where, this is going to sound so, I'm going to listen back to this and cringe so bad, but like the part where you're watching Eli die, I literally felt like I was like 15 again, and I was like, I can't watch it, like it's too much. Like, it was like, I don't know, it just hit me. The whole game was like amazing.
You're stopping it or reversing it by using that new power as well. Yeah, was really cool. And then
I was like, is that good? Should I stop it? I was like, should I stop it? Because I don't know if I should. Like,
yes, obviously
I did, but
I didn't hesitate. But then,
but then it's like you're changing the course of history, kind of, aren't you? And then it's like you work for them. You work for them, though.
Yeah,
and I was like, I can't.
The bit like after the credits when it's like when it's like Alyx like hired by a G-Man.
Yeah, I was literally. I took the headset off there. I didn't even see the credits. I was like, I'm done.
Well, did you see the after credits bit?
No, you're joking.
No,
there
is.
I always do this. Why do they always do this in games? Just make it end when it ends. I don't need to see an after credits bit. They always do this.
Games take a lot of time to play. To make.
You can skip the credits. You can skip it.
You can skip the credits and the Half-Life. I recorded the whole thing because I wanted to, but like they are some of the even there's a lot of people on there. They're some of the shortest credits. Like, I recently finished like a game where I left. I was like, right, I'll leave the credits running. I left the room and I came back like 20 minutes later and it was still going. It's not like that for Half-Life Alyx.
I did like 3 chapters in a row. So at that point, I was pretty much done with standing in.
So can I tell you what the ending is then?
Yes, you can.
So it comes back and you're through the viewpoint of Gordon Freeman in VR and you're there with Eli Vance and he's like saying about like, oh my god, like they've taken Alyx, we need to rescue her. And he passes you the crowbar to say, let's go get her. And then you grab the crowbar, saying that the next game you're going to be playing Gordon Freeman rescuing Alyx's, and then it ends. And it's like, that's the bit that gave me like the major chills, and I like blew my mind. And you're seeing the footage. He hands the crowbar, and I don't just pick it. I just go like, boom, and I'm like, yeah, and I'm like fist bumping. So I'm so hyped.
Sorry, I'm all excited and I'm hitting my keyboard.
I can't believe that.
So good.
Do you know what? I was thinking it's pretty brave of them to not. I was like, it's quite cool of them to not let you play as Gordon.
Yeah. I mean, it's like 5 seconds, but
yeah.
like...
Oh my god, I can't believe. But anyway, yeah, the ending was like up to that point, all of that was amazing. You know
so good.
You know, fighting the giant thing, going through the building, all great, and then that apartment block thing was just like it completely blew me away.
Yeah. It's like walking through an M.C. Escher painting.
Yeah,
Half-Life-ified.
When you're
other games have done it. Yeah, other games have done it, and for some reason they've never done it as well as this.
It was top class, so good.
Right, shall we put it on the list?
Yes, let's.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so yeah, you got the list up. Do you, Ellen?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Before we put Alyx in there, do you just have any kind of thoughts on the list? Any do you like it? Any things that seem in the wrong place, or any other games you like on there?
I absolutely adore Prey.
Yes, because everyone's always putting Prey down and saying it's too high, and I'm the Prey fan.
No, Prey is amazing. Like Prey is, I was really lucky to. It was one of the kind of games that I covered as part of my job. I actually went to Arcane Studios in Austin, and like got chatting to them, like was just so much fun. Just like, and I played I was at a preview event where you played the like opening bit of the tutorial, and then like the first mimic you came across, like I screamed, threw down the controller.
Oh, wow.
And everyone was like, "You okay?" I'm like, "I'm not good with these," but like it was fine. And like I'm also like, as an arachnophobe, I was really worried, like, because I love Arcane games. Dishonored and the Dishonored series I think is like top tier ever, and I was really worried that I wasn't going to be able to play this, because I was like, is it going to trigger my arachnophobia? But it didn't. It was like occasionally when they start like multiplying and there's a lot of legs, but then when it's 4 legs, I was fine. They were just squiggly spaghetti monsters for me. But yeah, I think it's so good, and I think I was like, it's amazing, but it's quite hard. It's a lot harder than some of the other games that Arcane have made, and I think people might have been off put by that. But I think it's such a good game. I've not played Death Stranding, and so I'm really intrigued that it's 4, because I've had such mixing. I've had some people who say that they love it, and then some people who are like, it's ladder simulator and I'm bored of it. I don't like walking all the time. So like, I think that's a real love-hate. I think it's a real Marmite game. Last of Us and Last of Us Part 2, outstanding games. I think they're great. Like I played The Last of Us fairly recently, like to be able to play The Last of Us 2 and know what was going on.
Are they the right way around? So as they are on the list, part 2's above part 1. Are you in that camp? Because we're pretty close between the two of them, and so
I'm very close between the two of them. Like there were some things in part 2 that I was like, oh, they could have done that differently, but I think like I liked what they did personally with it. I thought like just playing it as a game was amazing. I think they were a little bit heavy-handed with the killing's bad, actually. It was like, yeah, okay, we know that. But in terms of like the mechanics of the game, and like just like the acting in it obviously as well was so good. But I loved that variation of playing all the different characters in that. I loved switching between the characters. And there's like some games where you get that and you're like, oh my gosh, I've just invested all these points in this person, now I have to start again. But it always felt refreshing, and I did like seeing those like two sides, and it was kind of heartbreaking at moments where you're like, oh my gosh, don't do that, don't, you're gonna make, I know what happens next because I played it 8 hours earlier or whatever.
So that's the other thing, the way they jump around with time, and you're suddenly playing as, you know, another character, but like from a while ago, but you don't know who they are yet. Like the way it's able to keep you guessing, and like you you only really put the full puzzle together in like the final chapter, really, and up until then you're still working out, you know, the puzzle that the story is, whereas the first game is much more linear.
It's not don't worry, it's not anything like alt-right or Gamergate that we disagree about on it. It's just that I thought that the first one, because it's slightly less grim, was a bit more fun. That's where we differ. Yeah.
I think that's 100% solid point. And I felt with part 2, I felt the last chapter slightly outstayed its welcome a little bit. I felt like Ellie should have learned her lesson by the time she'd like settled down in the house. And that should have been her closure moment.
I mean, that would have been lovely. Like, that's what we all want that. And when she's like, "Oh, I'm gonna go," and we're like, "No, you don't. You stay with your child and your girlfriend, and you stay right there in your beautiful home." But I feel like that would have almost been like, I think the ending they went for in the end, as horrible as it was, made sense.
Yeah, I don't think it wasn't like, "Oh, I want a happy ending." I think it was just like, wait, she's still going after this woman who easily defeated her.
Yeah.
And like, she still kind of can almost easily defeat you right at the end, and she's completely emaciated and like, but I still did like enjoy. It was I think one of my favorite things in that game is all the benches. Where you upgrade all your stations. It's wild, the detail, and like I don't think they needed to go into the detail, but I appreciated the detail of when you upgrade your guns. Like if they had to cut anything, I'd be happy to cut that. But my favorite thing is that one of them you go up to, it's a trap. Like you go up to fix your gun, and then you get ambushed. You're like, ah! And I was like, from then on, I was like, I don't trust this game. But I liked that.
I realize every game you talk about are like scary games, but then you keep saying you don't like scary games. Every game you've mentioned has just terrified you.
Well, the thing is, I think these are all like scary, but not distinctly horror. They have horror elements that scare the heckins out of me. But yeah, I mean, Skyrim's solid, high up. I've not played a lot of that because it's got spiders in it. But I've played I have played a lot of it at the same time, if it makes sense. Yeah, there's I'm intrigued that Resident Evil is there and not Resident Evil 4 yet, because that, from what I know of the fan base, that's like the big one.
Yeah, so that's the remake of the original was that
the remake
one.
Of the original,
the GameCube one.
Right. Undertale, good that it's that. Undertale I hadn't played, and then I had to record something for a list video, so I played it all the way through on Pacifist, and then I was like, oh, okay, I get it now. I really get it. Spider Dance is the best song ever. It's so good. Yeah, it's really good. I think there's some really fun ones. The Forgotten City, is that the one where it's all like watery?
That's the one.
It's like a time
sorry,
loop.
You go, Ollie.
It's like a time loop where, like, if they break a rule or sin, everyone dies. They all turn to gold.
Wow!
But they can't figure out if it's true or not. And obviously, every time they do it, they all die. So you kind of you're in the loop where you're the only person that can remember the previous loop. So you're trying to
that was the first
basically.
game we ever did. So it was a Skyrim mod originally. And then it became its own game. Yeah, it came out last year, quite a recent one.
Yes.
Yeah. So where do you think Half-Life Alyx should slot in? If it was...
Well, I mean, number one.
Okay. That's what most people say for their game selection.
It's my favourite. But
yeah. So
I think it should be hanging around with the Last of Us games.
Okay. All right. So obviously, its final say is, it's Ollie on my list, but feel free to like try and influence and argue as much as you want to get it higher. But yeah, maybe you won't need to. Where do you think, Ollie? You seem pretty hot on it.
I would put it between Doom and Undertale. Between 6 and 7. So it would become the new 7. And then,
okay.
Or if I was allowed,
you would want it above
put
Prey.
It in above Prey, yeah. But that's a sticking point every episode. So
yes.
That's why Doom and Prey are chained together. It's because
There's
I'm
a few
like,
games that always
you can't
come
move
up,
them.
which I'm really hot on, but like no one else seems to be. So when you single out Prey as like one,
I love Prey.
liking,
If Alyx is below Prey, I wouldn't be upset.
okay,
Wow.
Basically, because I think Prey is such a Like Arcane are just so good at like their
Yeah.
world build. That's my favorite thing. World building. If they make me believe that this is a cool world, then I'm like, yes, you've already sold me, and then you can turn into a cup. And
Exactly. I share your love for Dishonored as well. That are among my favorite games of all time.
Love those.
Dishonored
so
2
much.
in particular is amazing.
Oh, Dishonored 2 is outstanding. Yeah.
So where would you put Alex then?
Yeah. So I got to explain to Ellen. So for those on the video, they can see this. Audio won't know. There's a chain that's linking Prey and Doom. So sometimes when we argue, we like put there's little additions that we make and stuff. So Prey and Doom they're chained together. They can never be apart. Was one of the ways I was able to keep Prey up. Was Doom's always connected to it, but underneath it. But funnily enough, I probably would put Half-Life Alyx between Prey and Doom. But seen as I physically can't because there's a chain.
Because you did that. You did that.
I know. I did that to myself to protect Prey, but I've hurt Half-Life Alyx because of it. Because I would put Alyx above Doom, but I think Doom obviously with like legacy and impact, it's kind of it's the granddad, like
Yeah.
So
and Half-Life 2 could also be considered to be almost a new Doom, but Half-Life Alyx I don't think could be.
Yeah. I mean, I would put Half-Life 2 above Prey, I think personally, but like there's years of nostalgia. I've probably completed that game over 10 times, I think, from when it came out. Like it's so I can't speak to it without bias. But
that's great.
I think I agree. I don't think we need a debate this week. I think I agree with you for the
There
position.
we go. So it's going in 7.
Yeah.
And Mr. Driller's being knocked out the top 10 at last. That had to happen at some point.
Finally drilling his way down to the bottom.
It makes me sad. Do you like puzzle games, Ellen?
I do.
I strongly recommend Mr. Driller. It is a strong recommendation to everyone I meet.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically, have you ever played it before?
No, I have not.
They've released a new 4K HD version where you
Wow.
drill, and basically the game's unbelievable. Like the music is a 10 out of 10, the graphics are a 10, the gameplay is a 10, and it's like £4. Play it on Switch, and it's cheap. I'd strongly recommend
I do
it.
like Switch games.
Yeah.
There's one for when you finish Half-Life 2. Also, everyone watching with the video version, keep an eye on the comments for Ellen's comment when she will comment that I've finished Half-Life 2 and her thoughts on it. That will be up within the next month, no doubt.
As soon as I finish my Let's Play of Bioshock and everything.
They made a Half-Life 2 VR mod that Valve were like, oh yeah, it's good enough that we could put our stamp of approval on it. So if you own Half-Life 2 on Steam, and I mean, you need to get a headset.
Yeah, I need to get a headset.
Yeah. I mean, I used an Oculus Quest. I didn't use an index for this, so they're not. They are expensive. They're not as expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you need the whole big PC to power it as well as the other thing. But yeah, well done. A new addition to the top 10 is always exciting. So as it stands now, I kind of read from 5 down. So 5 still Prey, 6 Doom, 7 Half-Life Alyx, and then underneath 8 is Undertale.
Yeah, and then just to finish off top 10, Yoshi's Island, Ooblets. There we go.
Yeah, Ooblet's still hanging on there. I feel like its days are numbered, but
its days are numbered indeed. I liked Ooblets. The thing is with the games that are in the ones we argue about a lot, like Ooblets and Prey, is that like I like them, I just don't like them as much as you. Like it's always that thing. It's like I like Prey on paper, but in reality, it's like it is so fiddly and difficult to do. Like I ended up putting all my points into teleporting and turning invisible, so that I didn't have to fight anything. And it's like on paper, it's amazing, but actually in reality, I was like, "This is."
We can't put things further on the list because you're bad at them, Ollie. That's not the way it works. Just because you're a fake gamer, Ollie, doesn't mean we can start putting these games.
Look, it's a hard game. It's one of the hardest games that Arcane has made. So let's be nice to each other.
You're just being nice, Ellie, because you haven't put up with him trying to play Street Fighter on the fight stick. That conversation you referenced earlier, that was to me. Oh dear. Anyway, so yeah, that's the end of our talk for Half-Life Alyx. Do you want to mention what games we got coming up, Ollie? Because we we can let people know what's coming and if they want to play along with us.
I had a panic because I realised that they're on my phone, and obviously I'm recording with my phone, so I managed to find them though and get them. So next episode is Phoenix Wright, Ace Attorney, the first one. That's on January 27th. Then on February 10th, we have
Wait, we stop 1 second. Ellen, do you want to just, as he's going, just shout a number for your prediction of where they're going to end up on the list. Even if you don't even know, even if you haven't heard of the game, and then we'll see how good you do, just to make a game of it.
Phoenix, right?
9.
Ooh, that's high.
I was just like, we're big Phoenix Wright fans over at OX Towers, so yeah, they got me into it when the new one came out on Switch.
Yeah, that's
really
what we're playing.
Nice.
Really good.
That's what we're playing. Yeah. Okay, and then on February 10th we have Rogue, as in the original from like the 80s.
Ooh, influential, but has been surpassed. So I would say 12.
Ooh, that's still pretty
still
high.
high.
Yeah. Okay. Then after that, I think this is the first time we're announcing this. We have Sonic 3 and Knuckles on February 24th with a guest.
I mean, I love Sonic, but it's a very particular taste for people. So I don't know. Going by your top 10, I'd say probably more like a 17.
Ooh, okay. Okay, that's fair enough. A lot of games end up around there, to be honest with you. Okay, then after that, we're planning, it could still change, very unlikely it's going to change, but we're planning on doing Atomic Heart on March 10th, which will be just after it's come out. It's like the 2-week space between it being out and us releasing the episode.
Exciting.
Yeah, you can guess that one if you want. So
Have you seen much of that, Ellen?
I've seen bits and bobs, but like not enough to have a proper
it just looks
opinion on
mad.
it
It looks
yet,
interesting.
so-
So
Russian
we thought
Bioshock.
Yeah.
we normally do old games. We thought we'd do a new one.
And then after that, we're doing much requested, which I hope everyone remembers that when everyone requested Undertale, and I picked it. Once again, I'm looking out for you all. I've picked Walking Dead, the season 1. The Walking Dead season 1, the Telltale, whatever it's called.
Solid.
Yeah, so that's March 24th. Where do you think that's going to come?
That could be a 10 or 11. That could be quite high up. I mean, basically Telltale made that, and then they were like, okay, this is better than every other, like, because they had like the Jurassic Parky ones.
I watched a
before
video of that
that
the other
weren't
day.
as great, and then they were like, okay, we've hit the winning formula here. Let's do this forever. So yeah, I think everyone is like so in love with the character. So yeah, high up.
Cool. And we do actually have one more confirmed. Jay, do you want me to read it out?
Yeah. No,
It's the
that
next
guest is confirmed that they're good.
Cool. Okay, so then after that, on April 7th, we have The Dig with a special guest, and I've never even seen a screenshot of that game, so I don't know.
Have you heard of The Dig?
No.
So it's an old LucasArts adventure game. But like a more serious one, not like Monkey Island or anything like that.
Is it like Mr. Driller?
It's something. If you go in expecting it to be like Mr. Driller, you're going to be disappointed, Ollie.
I might have stumbled across it.
Steven Spielberg was attached in some way, involved in its production, I believe.
Wow.
Cool.
Yeah. Do you want to just throw out a
interesting.
number just to see if you get lucky?
19.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Just because I don't know it.
Yeah. You could be right.
Yeah, so those are the games coming up. A lot of the games are quite cheap or Game Pass stuff. So if you anyone watching wants to play along and join in the conversation, look out for our post if you want to kind of put in any feedback or questions that we may include in the show. But apart from that, a huge thank you to Ellen for joining us and for bringing Half-Life Alyx to the podcast.
Oh,
Yes,
thank you
thanks
for
so
having
much.
me. Oh my gosh, yeah, no, when you were like, hey, do you want to talk about your favourite game? And I was like, yes, I'm going to surprise you.
Yeah, you're
It's
like,
not the obvious
finally,
one.
I can make people play the game, so they talk to me about it. That's so good.
So yeah, I was very excited. You gave me the exact opportunity I needed.
Yeah. You did say because I was like, oh, you know what? I'd like, because we've been discussing who to ask as a guest. I was like, oh, I'd really love Ellen to be on, but I was like, oh, she must be so busy with all her stuff and that. I was like, well, I'll message you. I mean, she just might say no, and I message you, and you said yes, like within like 10 seconds. I don't know if you'd even thought
Like,
read
yes,
what my
Half-Life. I need to
message
talk
was.
to Half-Life.
I was like, oh, brilliant. Is there anything that you obviously we mentioned about Outside Extra, and we'll leave a link to that, but is there any kind of like more personal stuff that you want to plug or us to mention, things you've been doing?
Well, I've got my own personal vloggy channel where recently I've been playing through the entirety of the original BioShock because I started a Let's Play in 2013 and then I had to stop doing it for various reasons. And so it was the, 25th, no, 10th. 15th. Which anniversary
Probably
was it last year? 15th.
Probably 15th.
15th. There we go. I was getting the wrong numbers in my head. And it was the 15th anniversary last year. So I was like, I should really actually finally get around to playing it now. And it's I've been having an absolute blast with it.
There's one poor person
really
who's been waiting for the next episode of that playthrough. Like, when's it gonna be? They refresh the page every morning. Like, what happens next, Ellen?
It just ends. And I literally there were comments of people going, "Oh my god, I'm so glad you're doing this again." I was like, "Right, that's for you. This is for you." All 5 of you.
I had a similar thing where I was doing all sorts of different games, and then when kind of Minecraft really took off, and I suddenly had a lot of younger people watching, and I was doing games that young aren't suitable, so I just had to quietly private them. So I was like episode 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. No, it never existed. Just that was the way I solved that problem. Yeah, that's so good. And then also Ellen's just a great follow on Twitter as well. A good example of someone kind of using their platform for kind of a lot of good. You talk about a lot of kind of good social justice things and kind of standing up, and also not salty replies, but putting people in their place is always quite entertaining. Yeah. I always enjoy.
Well, I've been making videos and been on Twitter since 2009. Been making videos since 2010. So I have very thick skin and little patience, and so that means that I'm just sometimes, occasionally, most things I ignore, but then sometimes no, I'm gonna talk to you about this. But yeah, also more recently I've started doing TikTok because saying about Twitter and everything wild that's happening there on the moment, I've been doing mini rundowns of what has happened on Twitter, being so this is how wild it is on there right now.
I mean, I'm in a similar situation. I've been in the kind of online public eye whatever for years, but I see the stuff that you're dealing with and I'm like, oh, I've not had to deal with anything like that because I'm a man. It's literally all this a whole I've got loads of hate, I've had all horrible, I've had almost everything, but I see the stuff you get, I'm like, oh, that's just a whole nother disgusting side I haven't had to deal with. But then to see you breaking it down about how rubbish it is, and then doing it with wit as well, it's entertaining, and I think for other people in your situation, seeing that is probably really helpful for them. So yeah, entertaining follow on Twitter as well. Their handle will be on screen, so recommend that.
Cheers. Yeah, no, I always find that the best way to deal with people who are not being very nice to you is to humorously take them down. Don't get personally, don't take it personally, don't get too invested in it, but it's the kind of, you kill them with kindness, or just laugh at what they're doing, be like, this is very silly, you look very silly doing this, and it tends to work better. Some people are like, oh, just block them, and it's no, they just shout louder and make new accounts. Make fun of them, but their behavior anyway.
I'm always on the side of muting, so I feel like if I say someone says something,
great.
If I block them, they're going to be like, oh, he got so angry and blocked me. But if I mute them, then I feel like I hope they're still messaging me, trying to annoy me. I just don't know. It's quite satisfying.
Is that why you never answer my messages? That makes sense.
I don't care about this Street Fighter controller, Ollie. I'm going to mute you. I don't. Anyway, that is going to be the end of this podcast here. So next one out in 2 weeks, as usual. Also, quick mention, hopefully everyone had a lovely new year and a nice little break. This would have been the first one kind of back since then. But that's the end of it here. Thanks for watching or listening, and we'll see you all later. Bye.
Cheers, bye.